Chapter 624, Coexisting in the same room. Zhang Yi chatted with Bai Li Changqing at the password bar and learned some about the changes in Linhai City. He already had some calculations in his mind, and this operation would still be based on his personal safety as the first priority. While ensuring his own safety, he would try his best to kill those Ronin. After all, there were only 13 people in Eclipse Moon, and Zhang Yi knew very well that they were able to cause chaos in Linhai City only because they were not restricted by any power. The Jiangnan region has too large a jurisdiction to concentrate a large number of troops against them. Otherwise, with the 6 investigation teams and 5,000 Yan Yunwei at their disposal, Eclipse Moon would have no chance of winning even if their numbers were multiplied several times over. Therefore, the end of this farce is inevitable, but the process is still unpredictable. Eclipse Moon is not stupid enough to fight Jiangnan region to the bitter end. If they choose to flee or keep running around Jiangnan, that would be the most troublesome problem. Apart from Blizzard City, the headquarters of Jiangnan, there is hardly any city in Jiangnan that can contend with them. After all, that is an organization that has gathered the most vicious thugs in the Kanto region. However, except for Tianhai City. If they run to Zhang Yi's territory, they won't get any advantage either. It's just that Zhang Yi doesn't want to see that result. In the afternoon, Zhang Yi received a message from Lanqin City. It informed him to go to the operations center the next morning to attend an operations meeting. Zhang Yi laughed after reading the message. I thought Zhu Shuai would want to talk to me alone. It seems I was wrong. He shrugged at Bai Li Changqing. This was a good thing. It showed that Zhu Jing did not care too much about his presence, and Zhang Yi was happy not to be noticed. Bai Li Changqing laughed heartily. This time, those summoned from the outer city are all first-class experts. You are not the only one. General Zhu doesn't want to meet with each one individually either, so it's more convenient to chat with everyone together. His eyes flashed. After all, this time, it involves very important and complicated matters. There's a lot of information you don't know, and I have to explain it to you one by one. Zhang Yi nodded. That's good. He was also very interested in those top experts from the outer city. Last time, there were too many people, and he couldn't tell who was strong and who wasn't. This time, due to the special nature of the mission, those who come must be masters of extraordinary strength. It would be good to exchange ideas with them. As Zhang Yi thought this, he unconsciously forgot one thing in his heart: his strength is top-notch in the entire Jiangnan region. This is Zhang Yi's old problem. His overly cautious attitude has made him accustomed to valuing others. However, since Zhu Jing didn't see him today, then Zhang Yi reached out and knocked on the black plexiglass table, smiling and saying to Bai Li Changqing, "Let's drink together then." Bai Li Changqing smiled and pressed the service bell. "Okay, let's drink to our heart's content today." Zhang Yi has always had a good drinking capacity, and that night, he and Bai Li Changqing and the others drank many bottles dry. Meng Siyu's cheeks were red, his body swaying, and he had some difficulty walking. Wu Di came over with 2 bottles in his hands, his eyes blazing as he sought revenge on Zhang Yi. Although he lost the fight to Zhang Yi, he wanted to get even at the table. But this time, he lost even more miserably. Even Liang Yu, who had always been quiet, was dragged by Meng Siyu and had some drinks. It wasn't until midnight that Bai Li Changqing drove Zhang Yi and the others to the apartment that hosted foreigners from the outer city. Whether on purpose or by accident, Bai Li Changqing only gave them one room. Liang Yu had drunk less and her head was still clear. She looked at Zhang Yi lying on the bed and realized that the two of them were in the same room together, and she couldn't help blushing. Just as she was about to go and open another room, Zhang Yi suddenly sat up in bed. His eyes were a little unfocused, but his mind was still clear. The wine was not enough to get him drunk. And Zhang Yi's personality would not allow him to get drunk in a strange place. Have they all left? Zhang Yi yawned and asked. Liang Yu bit her lip, put the long knife aside, and said leisurely, "They've left." "Are you pretending to be drunk?" "Not really," Zhang Yi said indifferently. "Even if I were drunk, my mind would still be clear." He had indeed drunk quite a lot, but only at first. Later, even when Wu Di and the others came up to play with him, Zhang Yi secretly used his ability in the different space to pour most of the wine in. He took out a bottle of milk from the different space and asked Liang Yu to heat it up in the kettle for her. Then Zhang Yi sat on the sofa in the room and waved his hand, and Hua Hua jumped up and sat cross-legged on his lap. Zhang Yi stroked Hua Hua while leaning back on the sofa, pondering the information he had obtained today. His eyes were bright, shining with wisdom. This time, the district has gathered the top aliens from the outer cities, rather than gathering forces from all sides as it did last time. This also means that the tactics have begun to change. No longer will they use the advantage of numbers to fight encirclement battles, but instead they will use elite teams. In other words, the advantage of numbers is already useless? Zhang Yi narrowed his eyes slightly. This approach is indeed correct. After the rank of the aliens reaches Delta, especially combat-oriented aliens, their power has far surpassed the understanding of humans. They can even ignore most light thermal weapons. In this state, low-level aliens and ordinary humans, even highly trained fighters, will find it difficult to be effective in front of them. After the destruction of the 10 alien organizations, the Jiangnan region realized this and began to change their combat methods. Next, the 10 God Squad will lead the charge, and the outsiders in the outer city will most likely assist in the battle. So what is the role of oneself and the other outsiders in the outer city? Cannon fodder? Zhang Yi softly mouthed these words. However, he quickly shook his head and dismissed the idea. If cannon fodder is needed, then a large number of ordinary outsiders and elite fighters would be the best choice. And this time, the people drafted over will definitely be stronger than the outsiders from the first 10 outsider organizations. Although the overall combat capabilities of us outsiders from the outer cities are not as good as those of the professional teams in Blizzard City, our individual combat capabilities are not necessarily much weaker than theirs. According to some of the information we have previously obtained, Eclipse Moon only has 13 members. In any case, our numbers are superior. So, the big area's consideration is to let us contain those people and create an opportunity for the Heavenly Squad? Liang Yuan warmed the milk and handed it to Zhang Yi. I think, could it be that we are just being asked to make sure that those Ronin don't escape? After all, once they realize that something is wrong, they are likely to just run away. It is much more difficult to pursue them than to annihilate them. Chapter 625, Palpitations. Zhang Yi nodded, took the bottle, and took a sip of the warm milk. After drinking wine, drinking some of this does indeed make one feel a lot warmer and more comfortable in the stomach. Yes. It's easy to tell who wins, but this is a war, and others won't fight to the death with you. They will use all kinds of plots, and if they can't beat you, they will run. He suddenly thought of an interesting fable and looked at Liang Yu with a smile. Teacher Liang, I want to ask you a question. If a mouse runs into an ammunition depot with a fire in its mouth, what should be done? Liang Yu blinked her eyes, and she quickly came to her senses. This is a very classic story from a film or television drama from decades ago. Then let the cat chase it with water, she said with a smile. We are the cat, and the eclipse is the mouse. M.Gon.Og. Zhang Yi asked with a smile, but in this story, what are water and fire? Liang Yu frowned slightly, as this question puzzled her a little. Fire should refer to the various negative effects they bring. As long as they exist for one day, the region will not be able to rest in peace, and externally, it will also make people think that Jiangnan region is incompetent. As for water, I'm not sure. Water is used to extinguish fire. How would Jiangnan region plan to solve the problem of these Ronin? How would she know? Zhang Yi took a deep breath. Perhaps, this water is us. Us? I don't quite understand. Liang Yu was confused. Zhang Yi rubbed Hua Hua's head vigorously. We will be acting together with the Heavenly Squad, and the main force will naturally be the Heavenly Squad. Then, we may be the ones used for sacrifice. If possible, I believe the higher-ups at the regional headquarters would not mind trading our lives for the destruction of the Eclipse Moon Group. Do you agree? This was Zhang Yi's biggest concern. He didn't mind facing danger and going up against Eclipse Moon. But he also doesn't want to be cannon fodder. Liang Yu's eyes were darting about wildly. She wanted to say something, but when the words came to her lips, she didn't know how to say it. Indeed, according to common sense, this is the case. I don't think there's anything wrong with Jiangnan region doing that. Even in battle, there are ways to lure the enemy in, and let some soldiers sacrifice themselves as bait. War is like this. In order to achieve victory, small soldiers and even large vehicles can be sacrificed. It's all about capturing the general at the end. But, Zhang Yi added a little emphasis. He lowered his head and stroked Hua Hua, feeling the soft warmth of its fur, which had always been his favorite. I'm not that great. Especially when I'm with you and Hua Hua, we need to be more careful together. No matter what happens, you must remember one thing, put our own safety first. Once you find that your lives are in danger, escape to a safe location as soon as possible. Liang Yu was silent for a moment after hearing this. She suddenly looked up and asked Zhang Yi seriously, even if our escape causes the mission to fail, we still have to do this? Zhang Yi glanced at her, his gaze playful and teasing. Do you think too highly of yourself? If the Jiangnan region really wants to eliminate Eclipse Moon, they can do it in any way. They are just weighing the cost and whether the price is worth it. There is even a possibility. If the price is too high, they may not rule out negotiating with Eclipse Moon and allowing them to survive in this land. It's the end of the world, everyone has their own interests to protect. Even those in the upper echelons of this blizzard city are no exception. Liang Yuadai was shocked and said excitedly, that's impossible. If something like that were to happen, it would be reviled by everyone in the world. But Zhang Yi smiled and said, since the day when Blizzard City called a meeting of all the foreigner organizations in the Jiangnan region to establish the Superpower Federation, it has represented that Blizzard City is unable to govern the entire region. This is not just the current situation of this land, but the same is true for the whole world. With its strong national power, the Hua country is still able to maintain stability in the 6 major regions. In other regions, many are falling apart, with different powers of aliens of varying sizes standing side by side. Even Neon itself is divided into 2 major organizations, the Pelican in the Kansai region and the Izumo in the Kanto region, and there are also many other alien organizations such as Eclipse that are surging with hidden currents, intent on overthrowing the established order. Conflict and chaos will become more and more frequent with the emergence and growth of aliens. To quote the 3 kingdoms, the general trend of the world is that when things are divided for a long time, they will unite, and when they unite for a long time, they will divide. Zhang Yi was prepared. However, although Liang Yu had experienced many changes in her character due to the previous events, it was difficult to change one's nature. Zhang Yi had to explain things clearly to her to prevent her from getting carried away at critical moments. After all, this was not the first time she had taken risks due to her overzealousness. Liang Yu was not as eloquent as Zhang Yi. Pouting, she remained silent for a long time before hugging her arms and saying, everything is your reasoning. I understand. Anyway, I'll just do whatever you tell me to do when the time comes. She teaches physical education. She is very good at using a knife, but it is more or less difficult for her to use her brain. Zhang Yi nodded with satisfaction, that's right. Zhang Yi looked at her and then at Hua Hua, who was snoring contentedly on his lap. He felt in his heart that this was really an excellent partner. He was strong and obedient, and it couldn't be better. Thinking about the meeting tomorrow, Zhang Yi said, okay, it's getting late, let's get some rest. He said this and then hugged Hua Hua and stood up, planning to go take a shower and go to bed. Liang Yu's face flushed red. Rest, rest. Zhang Yi blinked, and then remembered that Bai Li Changqing had only booked them one room. He wondered if he had drunk too much and forgotten. Perhaps Bai Li Changqing felt that they had an unusual relationship. Oh no, it's already this late, and the apartment manager must be asleep. Zhang Yi rubbed his chin, feeling a bit troubled. Honestly, he didn't mean to do it. His mind was full of thoughts about dealing with Eclipse, and he hadn't thought about this at all. Liang Yu's embarrassed face turned red. She forced herself to remain calm, twisted the doorknob, and planned to go out. "I'd better go out first," Zhang Yi said faintly behind her. "It's so cold outside at night, do you want to freeze to death? Besides, if you don't get a good night's rest today, you'll make a fool of yourself at such an important meeting tomorrow." Liang Yu lowered her head and spoke in a whisper. "But, there's only one room, how are we going to sleep?" Zhang Yi glanced at the bed in the room, which was a large double bed. "This bed is quite big, so it doesn't matter if we squeeze in."